Those of you who've listened to the podcast have heard me talk about Cleer Audio's headphones. They're incredibly comfortable and their sound quality punches way above their weight. Well, today's guest is Aaron Levine, the Vice President of Marketing behind Cleer Audio. And it's a real treat not only due to his partnership in providing the headphones for the Standard Age podcast, but because he allows for great insight into a company that has been steady building their brand in what can only be described as a saturated market. We dive deep into the what's, how's, and why's Cleer Audio does what they do, what sets them apart, and we end the show with what will possibly make its way into your living room. I really enjoyed Aaron's candor and in-depth look at their consumer electronics business, and I think you will also. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and you're listening to the Standard Age podcast. Well, Aaron, thanks for being on the show.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to jump off, where exactly are you from?
So I'm from Orange County, just an hour and 20 minutes north. Grew up in Huntington Beach and then Dana Point, and then went away for school for 4 years in Arizona, University of Arizona, so down in Tucson. And then after graduating, moved to LA, lived in LA for about 7 years, and then been in San Diego ever since.
Cool. So as a kid, Huntington Beach, were you skateboarding? Were you surfing?
Skateboarding, surfing, you name it in the water. We were doing it, junior lifeguards, the whole thing. I think it was a fun environment to grow up in, especially in that kind of community.
Yeah, for sure. And what'd your folks do?
They're both school teachers.
Oh,
so my
cool.
mom taught both elementary and then eventually high school, and my dad's been a college professor. Physics and astronomy, and then my mom did all the U.S. history and government and all that fun stuff. So it was
That's a pretty well-rounded
absolutely
repertoire, I would say, to grow up in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, school is definitely an emphasis, especially with my parents, and it kind of led me to where I'm at today. And it's interesting that their emphasis on education and just general knowledge and understanding of stuff it was a huge aspect of my upbringing.
Sure. So did some of those things come naturally to you, or were you drawn to any certain subject because of it, or were you turned off by physics, for example?
No, it's funny you said that. I was actually highly interested in it, just never that good. So I had, my brain more or less functioned towards the, communication, English, written word, just history, that stuff. But I was always really fascinated. My dad would take me on astronomy,
like excursions?
Yeah, excursions. We'd go to the desert and check out stars and, different astrological events that would happen. But it just as fascinating as it was, you go into that schoolwork and the mathematics of it and that stuff. And it's just never was my cup of tea, although I went through the whole thing. And, I always have fun stories. My dad taught at Orange Coast College. So it was a local community college in Orange County. And so he also did these telecourses as one of the projects that he would work on outside of his normal teaching job. And so these telecourses, especially around astronomy, had led to a bunch of opportunities for him to meet other professors as he would interview these leading researchers in the field of astronomy. Fast forward 20 years later, I'm in college taking an astronomy course as a freshman, and the professor says, do you have any relationship to Joel Levine? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's my dad. He's like, I've known him for years. It's he said you possibly could be taking one of my classes. And so next thing I know, I had an invite to dinner, and now I had to show up to this 8 a.m. class as an 18-year-old. And yeah, there you have it.
That's crazy. So what'd you end up studying at U of A?
So I was a communication major.
Okay. So still the written word?
Yeah, still the written word, how to communicate, how to tell stories. And then I minored in kind of a mix. It wasn't straight media arts, but it was more of a mixture between media arts and history.
So were you always just into creative writing and stuff like that too?
As much of creative, but really convincing people. I think it was kind of one of those things that, my mom always told me at an early age. I always had a good story of why I needed something, or why I wanted to go do something, or why it was okay for me to go do something. Sometimes it led to trouble. Sometimes it led to quite a bit of fun.
So you're kind of a natural salesperson then, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't say as much sales, but I think
Or
everybody
just
does.
persuasive?
Just more that persuasive, but it was also the ability to help tell that story and the fun aspect of that storytelling that goes into it.
Sure.
I think it's been that way as I started out in my career in public relations and helping tell stories of brands and products to really getting more into the general marketing mix and leveraging that storytelling capability to, tell product stories and brand stories. And, I think all of us are salespeople to an extent, whether it's your specific title, but ultimately as you go through your career, you have to be able to not only sell yourself, but sell your work to other people.
Sure. So what were some of your first jobs then?
So
Be it when you're 16
sure,
versus... Yeah.
Sure. My first job as a 16-year-old, I worked for an electrician. So I knew what it was like to roll up my sleeves and get really dirty on construction sites or work with people, especially in Southern California, hanging ceiling fans. Spent an entire summer, hanging ceiling fans with a family friend who had an electrical business, and kind of learn what it was like to do manual labor and physical labor, but also to use my brain. I mean, it's amazing what electricians have to encounter, both in a problem-solving aspect of it. And it was a fascinating summer, and then from there, I worked for an event marketing firm, so doing field promotions. So everything from handing out soft drinks on the beach to talking about collect call services, if it ages me specifically. So
right,
I don't know how many people make collect calls nowadays versus just hop on a cell phone.
Yeah, for sure. I guess when you graduated from college, what was sort of the foray into where you're at now? I guess you were in PR.
Yeah, well, I think that like each one of my jobs, especially as I started doing some field marketing and event promotion stuff, led to interests when I was in school. And I think that was kind of part of where I landed at, not only with a communications major, but also, my cross-disciplinary minor. Because I couldn't focus on one thing because I was so interested in many different things. And really the crux of it is I loved entertainment. I loved watching movies. I loved learning about the cinema in general. And then of course I was a huge music fan. So I still am today. And it kind of, you build off some of your personal interests as well as what you can learn in school. And being able to tell stories, not just in a journalistic way, but being able to tell them in a, conversational way became really fascinating with, not only in persuasiveness, but, just general, interest. And so as I graduated, it was like, then what? What do you do next? And, just looking for opportunity, and ended up, getting an internship up in LA, as most of us do. And, really seeing what it's like to not only live on your own, but live on your own without a whole lot of money coming in.
Yeah.
And so luckily I had a very generous great aunt and great uncle that invited me to stay with them to get on my feet.
Nice.
And, worked my way from an internship at a small PR agency. And, it's just one job after another, and following that kind of opportunity as well as passion. I think after my second PR agency job, I saw an opening at Pioneer Electronics when they were located up in Long Beach, and I applied. And it was part of that passion of, yes, I liked electronics and consumer electronics specifically, but in the audio and entertainment space. And you can imagine like working for a company like that, like I wasn't the only candidate, and starting to talk to the product teams and the people that were there in the interview process, and they're asking me like, well, what equipment do you have? And I started telling them like, well, it's not very good, but I borrowed this, and I took this from my dad, and I rebuilt this, and one thing led to another. And I was one of only a handful of the candidates that they spoke to that actually had practical knowledge of their business, of the products, whether it was theirs or just in general, and an interest in the industry. And ultimately, like even till today, it's like we're still working in an entertainment field. We're still trying to provide products for people to enjoy, not just to sell hardware.
And that role was a PR role?
Yeah. So I did PR at Pioneer Electronics for just south of 5 years. And then while I was at Pioneer, I was got contacted by Sony Electronics, and they really liked what I was doing for Pioneer, and that Sony is what brought me down to San Diego. And it was in late 2005. And I was at Sony for close to 10 years, started out in PR, and then again, finding interests within the organization. I'd always been interested in product development, product marketing aspects of it, and different areas of how to approach the business. and got connected with a couple of the executives there that liked what I was doing in the PR side, and understood my knowledge and passion. Say, hey, look, we could take this and really make some money with you, and helping guide some of our product categories and businesses. So I started out small as an associate product manager, and ended up helping with some of the first sound bars that Sony brought to market. And then from soundbars went to speakers and AV receivers and multi-room audio systems, and just was always willing to try something new that I found fascinating, whether it was from an electronic side or an execution to enjoy entertainment. And that helped put me in a position to develop some products and change some of the perception of Sony as a company when it came to audio in the U.S. market.
So what kind of music were you into growing up versus like even say today?
Well, really, I listen to most music, except for I'm just not a fan of country. I'm pretty sure that my limited exposure has to do with my upbringing on the West Coast and my parents not listening to country music. But some of the older stuff like Johnny Cash, I absolutely have some deep appreciation for. Mostly like rock music, love classic rock. It's really where my mom's inner hippie kind of had an influence. I spent quite a few years in junior high school driving to her school. I went to where she taught while she was still a middle school teacher, and it was those long morning commutes from our house where she was listening to, for those of you that are still in the Southern California area, K-Earth 101. So the oldies at that time, but now they've only gotten even more aged. But that's kind of every morning and every evening, driving home with her, really starting to have those conversations about what it was like of the music and that aspect. And the fact that she taught history was a different element, because she was talking about the historical significance of a lot of the music and how it applied to our culture, and really what was happening in society and the stories that they told. And then you start to parallel that to more current music, and you really start to see a deeper level of how music plays within society and culture, and gets, whether it's a movement that it generates or makes a statement. You can see it. You can even see it with a lot of the stuff that happened at the Grammys recently.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So when you're developing products at Sony and such, are you focused on any certain type of music or environment? I mean, it sounds like you were dealing a lot with home audio, obviously, not like automotive, car stereos and such. So
but it really comes into that live music experience. And so part of where I get really excited about music is seeing a live show.
Sure.
I think that you only have a certain amount of appreciation for an artist listening to them, whether it's on the radio or streaming their content. But once you hear them live and you see not just how they handle themselves on stage, but their musicianship, not something that's been produced, you really see a different kind of element for that audience, for that artist, and then you see the audience reaction as well.
Sure.
So I try to see a lot of live shows, and within the audio space, I mean, the biggest opportunity you have is to try and recreate that live experience for the end user. And so a lot of where we focused our attention while I was at Sony or Sound United or now here at Cleer, it was always about how do you recreate or give that consumer the closest opportunity to hear the music as it was intended by the artist, whether it was a live performance or a recording studio. I mean, there's so many nuances in music creation, from the instrument to the recording engineer and how they want it to sound, that we have a huge responsibility as an audio brand to be able to convey that, not in our interpretation, but try to convey it as closest to the interpretation of what the artist wanted, so that we can have that relationship and be that conduit where that consumer can go right back into that. Oh yeah, I remember hearing this band 20 years ago or 10 years ago or last week, and wow, this is like the pitch is right, the tonality is right, the range of frequency that we can recreate is right and does justice to it. And there's tons of ways to be able to do it, in any iteration. But a lot of times you get stuck with product that you just don't know how it's being developed, and some of it's just whether it's a mass production or not, like there's a level of tuning that happens, a physical tune or a qualification to make sure that it sounds right, because when you just produce something, it's just how it is, right? Sure. But there's always an element that can be tweaked, whether it's through software or through physical alterations of a product before you go into production. I think it's one of the things that I really learned, not just in my time at Pioneer, but at Sony and even Sound United, sitting down and talking to a lot of engineers, and it's not done because something was built, right? It's there's many weeks and months that happen after the product has been created to make sure that it sounds right.
So you've mentioned Sound United a couple different times. So assuming you left Sony for Sound United?
I did.
Okay.
I did. And so Sound United is a holding company that oversees a handful of iconic audio brands. So Denon, Marantz, Polk Audio, Definitive Technology, a multi-room company called Hios, as well as another high-end esoteric brand that they also support as well.
Gotcha. And so what was sort of the role there?
So I was the head of global marketing, and so I oversaw all the brands' go-to-market strategies across the globe. So I had teams spread out everywhere, and it was kind of my job to make sure that we help set the direction to achieve the goals of the organization across the different brand strategies, but also the product strategies of what would make sense, and make sure that we had as much resources that we could into those markets to help the sales organizations achieve their goals. So I think part of where marketing has this cross effect, it's like we can do a lot of things to elevate a brand, but we also have to help sell the product. And there's variations or ways to be able to do that. And one of those ways is, how do you get product to not just into a store, but sold through the store as well. And so what I mean by that is, like, not just training of the sales associates, but what items are you doing to drive traffic into the store? What are you doing when the customer's at the store to help make sure that they're making the right choice? So is it the right PR relationships that you have, and the reviews that are going on around the product, so that they can see that there's viability, and we just don't check the box on features, because a lot of people can do that, but are we really delivering against those features and making it a valuable proposition and a lifestyle, or because a lot of our product, it's although I feel like everybody should have headphones and everybody should have speakers and a sound system, that they're not needs, they're wants.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's not a necessity, right?
Well, for some, it's not a necessity. I
but
like
for
to
you,
disagree. Like,
yeah.
Not just for me, but even in my family, like, music's a big part of our life. It's we love seeing live shows. We love listening to music. There's always music on. I think there's more music in our house than there is TV most nights. It's usually, whether it's a background or a concentrated listening effort. I think, like, it's always fun for me to come home from work and see my 11-year-old on the floor of my bedroom listening to vinyl with some headphones on and reading a book. That's what she likes to do. She loves that experience. She likes that tactile feel of picking out an album, putting it on, and really getting energized. And it's one of those fun things that we do together. And even with my 13-year-old, like, both my daughters will take them out and we'll go vinyl shopping.
That's awesome. Where so who's the last show you saw live?
Wow, that's fairly easy, because my wife and I and kids, we just completed quite a bit of live shows at the end of last year. So we went and saw, as to my kids' choice, Chainsmokers. Okay. We saw Lizzo when she was in town. We unfortunately missed Sarah Bareilles because we had tickets, but I had recent surgery, and that kind of conflicted with that night. Matt and Kim, when they were in town, and so it's really it ebbs and flows depending on who comes and visits San Diego. Like, right now, we're really excited about Pearl Jam coming back to town. It's been a couple of years since they've been here, and those were hard tickets to get for not just the San Diego but the LA venue as well. I
was actually at their last San Diego tour stop, and that was actually the first time I'd ever seen Pearl Jam.
Oh, wow.
Which was kind of crazy, because that was the first CD I ever bought, was Pearl Jam 10.
Okay.
Which that's actually something else I often ask just people, not on the podcast, but just in life. I'm always like, what was the first CD you ever bought? But what was yours?
So first CD?
CD, yeah.
Specifically was Red Hot Chili Peppers. Was it
Blood Sugar
Sex Magic?
Sex Magic, yeah.
Yeah, that was my first CD. With
God, my such Discman. Good music back then too, these are all timeless records.
Yeah, absolutely, and they definitely stand up, and there's different elements. I mean, I think that as you develop audio products and really your love inside of just listening and helping people reconnect with music, whether it's current or older, there's always a level of memory that's triggered based on like this one song or this one album of like the time in your life, or whether it's happy or sad being picked up, or helping get through certain times. Like everybody always relates back to music, and it's one of those trigger memories, right? That everything of the emotions flood back in.
Yeah, I've was talking about it the other day. It's like music has that way of like transporting you back to the place where you first heard it very, very often. And it's just, there's not much else in life that can do that, really.
No, I think it's
maybe scents.
Yeah, besides music,
smells.
it's like smells and taste. There's another one that really brings back people into different times of life or memories. But I think it's fascinating, and again, it's that responsibility when you work in the audio business to make sure that you're creating products that can provide that
like sensory experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the more you get exposed to audio of any kind, you start to appreciate the music more and more, and the elements that it delivers, because it's fascinating to know, like, I've listened to very high end systems as well as really entry level, and there's a level of transparency to that music experience that you can get from every aspect of it. Some of it you need to know what you're doing or what you're listening for, but as you develop products, you want to make sure that no matter if it's that $99 pair of headphones, it does as good of a job as you can in that price point based on the material that you're provided in order to give that best in class experience for consumers.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about Cleer. What was the jump off point for Cleer? Like, how did it all begin?
So with Cleer, for me joining, it's been just about a year. I think that the opportunity really came for our CEO, Patrick. Back in 2015, the brand was fairly dormant. It was still held by a couple of investors that he got connected to. And there was always potential because they had access to some technology. And, Patrick and I met at our days at Sony, and he was both in the headphone business as well as digital imaging. And, he just kind of looked at this opportunity to actually create something in his vision for what consumers would want, and to be able to do things that were unrestricted from the bigger corporations and their directions and limitations, right? Because when you get into a large brand, you have to maintain that brand presence and that direction and that engine. And sometimes you can't experiment and you can't do things that are the right approach for the end user because you're just too big.
So the impetus was more or less to develop a more boutique type of brand.
Yeah, not just boutique, but something that one, San Diego specific. I mean, we're all fairly Southern California native as you can get in this part. I've been in San Diego for about 15, 16 years at this point. Patrick's been in San Diego probably about the same amount of time. My wife's from San Diego, so it's wanting to make sure that we could not just be another company, but be something that's meaningful to not only our community, but to the market, and give a different opportunity, whether it's a high design approach or a sonic creation that we could do. I mean, there's a ton of advantages of having been in the industry for so many years, because we have the contacts. We have the contacts to our neighbors, Qualcomm. I mean, they're a huge chip manufacturer in the audio space, and they provide a lot of support and guidance to us, and it's been a great relationship with a lot of the first we've been able to deliver with some of our products based on not only our proximity to Qualcomm's offices, but our longtime relationship that we've had over the course of the career. Same thing goes with some of our retail partners that we've known these guys and gals for many years before we both joined Cleer and put it into the direction that we're at now. And so as we continue to introduce new products, it's great to see the amount of impact that we can have both nationally as well as locally.
So what's the process like prototyping something like headphones or anything like that? Because like I'm coming from an apparel background, right? So it's a easy skip up, the 5 freeway to LA, and I'm like in fabric houses, I'm in trims and, production facilities, and I can get a sample in the matter of months very easily. And, cotton might be a little more straightforward than say, an electronics board, but maybe Qualcomm helps in that regard. But what's that prototyping process like?
It takes the better part of a year, if not longer, depending on organizations, and the complexity of a product. And first and foremost, just like in any industry, you have to come up with the idea first, and then the practicality of the idea, the market opportunity within that idea, and then figure out how you're going to make it, both in a technical and a design orientation. So we have one of the best industrial designers I've ever had the pleasure to work with, Alex Ari, who I met again. He was an ex-Sony guy. He did industrial design for Sony products for better part of 20 years. And, he wanted this opportunity as well to design something that wasn't restricted by brand guidelines that he wasn't involved with, that he was just a steward, that the years and the lineage beforehand said, this is how we need to do it. And this is what, but he takes that knowledge and that directional sense and really starts to be able to put that into product that it's just breathtaking. I mean, I know that although we're on a podcast, you can see some of the stuff that we've got lying around our office, and we don't make your typical, color palettes. We don't make your typical looking headphones or speakers for that matter. And that's kind of one of those proud moments of, we don't need to make a black product just because that's what, everybody makes, because that's the safe thing to do. We can make a navy or a dark gunmetal looking product with some accent points on it, so that it has that lifestyle and that accessory sense to really be a complementary piece, not just something that you pulled off the wall that is black in color because you don't know what else to choose from, right?
So it sounds like you guys really approach it from a form followed by function type of mentality.
We actually start with the consumer.
Okay.
Especially in this industry, you have to start with, like, are you solving a problem, or are you just adding another product to the pile of products that are out there? And so we always try to identify if there's a problem or something missing within a specific category, or whether it's a headphone, whether it's a true wireless product. Our first true wireless product, we knew that there was two things that were happening in the market. These true wireless earbuds were small, they were popping out of people's ears, and they didn't last very long as far as battery life. So we went to task with, how do we solve both of those problems, and who can we partner with to help solve those problems? So the first product, Ally, that we came up with, 10-hour battery life with the earbuds alone, which was more than double the industry standard at that time. And then you can charge them in the case, you get an extra 20 hours of runtime. So before you have to actually plug it into power, you're looking at 30 hours of runtime, which is, the better part of most people's work week.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, we wanted to make sure that there was a secure fit. And so we partnered with a company called FreeBit and worked on a design to make sure that it could stay in the ear no matter what you were doing. And that's just one aspect of trying to solve a problem within a compacted market, instead of just coming up with another product that looks like something else. Sure. And then you add a high design sensibility and what people actually want to wear and the style that they want to wear, that Alex really brought to the table. And we start to see some success with our small brand.
Yeah, I mean, the product line is obviously gorgeous and such, but like, because of the prototyping process taking a year, a lot of that is the back and forth, right? Because where are these things made primarily?
Yeah, in China.
Yeah, so are you guys flying to China to do these things, or is it mostly done in conjunction over email, obviously, with like CAD drawings and 3D modeling? Like, what's kind of that, and like, how many iterations does it take to get it right usually on average?
Yes to all of it. Iteration wise, I mean, it really depends. I mean, you could go from, a dozen iterations to, double or triple that, depending on the intricacies of the product or the acceptance of, the form factor and style. And then, you have to make concessions throughout the development of the product, because, we still have to work with acoustic engineers, and there's limitations on driver size, or we have an idea in our head of like, it needs to sound as good as this, and we can't deviate from that, otherwise we might not be in the right position within the market to see success. So it really varies depending on the project. Some of them are a little bit more out there, where we could be in 50 different iterations of it before we actually go into our first test production. Or it could be some other ones where we're like, all right, we're pretty confident that this is the right direction that we're going in, and it's only like 4 or 5. But it really varies depending on the complexities of it and the driver technology that we want to implement. Or if in a lot of cases, like if we're partnering with another technology company, what are their competencies and what will we learn throughout that process? I mean, we're a young organization with a ton of experience when it comes to our executive team and our design team. And we have a fantastic partner in in China that helps us build the products. So much more so that they are one of our major investors in the company as well.
Oh, wow.
So we actually have a dedicated group of engineers in space inside the factory that produces our product. And so they work with the production team and with us. So it's a lot of late calls, a lot of communication on email. But we have, with our small staff, we were able to create some really high quality, technologically advanced products in short periods of time. And we've been able to bring some of the first to market, that our larger competitors haven't been able to do but are working towards.
Are you a watch collector but having trouble finding something cool and unique? I mean, the last thing you really want is what everyone else has, right? Well, this is where my friend and former Standard H podcast guest Tim Jackson comes in. He and his wife Jana own Passion Fine Jewelry in Solana Beach, California, where you'll find an incredible assortment of independent watches waiting for you in their shop and online. And if you're getting engaged, have an anniversary coming up, or simply have another reason to buy jewelry, they have you covered. Passion Fine Jewelry also employs a goldsmith on staff for any custom desires, so you're able to go that route if you so choose. Visit Passion Fine Jewelry when you find yourself in Southern California, but they're also open 24 hours a day at passionfinejewelry.com. You can also find a wealth of information through Tim's blog, independentintime.com, where he covers anything independent watchmaking related, among a plethora of other information, so check that out as well. I've really enjoyed creating these podcasts on behalf of Standard H and sharing each of these personal stories with all of you. We each have goals, and it's the entrepreneurial spirit that inspired me to start the company. You can further support the brand and the podcast by visiting standard-h.com to pick up your choice of merchandise, and as always, thank you for listening. Lastly, if you have a moment, please rate and review the show. It makes a tremendous difference in keeping these things going. Now back to my conversation with Aaron. So how exactly did you find the manufacturers then? Were those partners through Sony and Sound United and places like that? Or
yes.
Was there
and
any
no.
like cold calling involved? Like
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, some of it is referrals, knowing people within the industry and asking questions of like, hey, who have you worked with? Who can you connect us with?
Sure.
Or can you make this introduction, and then does it work business wise for both parties? Being a small organization, our yield rate is extremely small. So some of what our partners do, they take a little bit of risk with us as well, but they know that what we're producing is an example of not only what we can do, but what they can do as well. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of the lures that Qualcomm has with us, or our partnership with Amazon and their voice services group, and same thing with Google and their voice services group, is we can execute on a high level in a much shorter period of time than some of their larger manufacturers, because we don't have a giant ship to make a right turn on. Yeah, the red tape's aside, but we don't have that giant machine that we need to turn right. We can just take a few of us, work on a side project, come up with some ideas and concepts, and then be able to go back and pitch it, and then execute in a different scale because of our close partnership with our factory.
So what were some of the products that were first to market, or if there's only one?
So with Cleer specifically, the brand was founded in 2012 by previous management team, as well as this investment group that we're working with still to this day. They were focused more on DJ headphones than they were more than the lifestyle and consumer kind of quality product. That group kind of fizzled out and didn't necessarily pay off very well, although they did start the brand into some good fanfare. It just didn't have sustainability based on the market changes. When Patrick came on, he kind of restructured just the direction of the organization to really focus on these lifestyle consumer products, not only in a performance audio sense, but in a high design. So it wasn't about just looking like a DJ. We wanted to make sure that it was fashionable for both men and women, but also high performance. And so that's where Alex got involved, and then of course myself more recently got involved to be able to take it to where we're at today. So from the current iterations, our first product to market was the Edge Pulse, which is a workout headphone, and the Trek, which was a wired noise canceling product. And then our first, where we started to see some real big success was our Flow product. And we saw that within the noise cancellation market. So going right after the big boys, but we did it a little bit differently. Like we didn't, want to go after a traditional, unibody kind of construction. So, as you're looking at them next to you, you can see like there's accents with rings on it that kind of showcase some of the design elements. We wanted to make sure that they were highly comfortable, but also performed admirably well. And then we wanted to make sure the audio performance was just fantastic with noise cancellation on. So we spent a lot of time tuning the product to make sure that when you're adding additional noise to cancel the ambient stuff that's going around you on a flight, that we could do it in such a way that we weren't affecting the sound quality or the frequency range of the headphones in that process.
And they're super comfortable, by the way.
Thank you.
All the while, if I've used them for long flights and such as well. And honestly, I remember my first over-ear headphone were those DJ ones by Sony in like 2002.
Yeah.
The silver ones, the DJ, I can't remember, like something 500. I can't remember the model number, and I just always remembered they would always push on my ear. They had like a 50 millimeter driver inside, if I'm not mistaken. And like they just, over time, they would just hurt my ears. Mm-hmm. Whereas these have, I don't know, a deeper type of recessed kind of cushion, I guess.
Yeah, we do use memory foam. The ear opening is a part of it, but then there's also that balance of noise isolation as well as performance. So we try to make sure like the angle of the ear pad is correct, the pressure, so that we can still keep that when you don't have them turned on, you still have a good isolation, and then when you turn them on, it only gets that much better. It goes back into the ergonomics of what the consumer needs or wants based on how they're using the product. So I think some of the opportunities that we've taken advantage of is getting closer to the consumer, understanding what is missing in the market, that it's not a one product fits all kind of situation.
Well, you've mentioned some of the investors and the partners, and I guess your manufacturing facility being one of them. Can you touch a little bit more on like what that structure looks like right now, or is that, I don't want to talk about anything too off limits. We don't have to talk numbers or percentages, but like, what is that relationship like when your manufacturer has a say, or kind of a?
Well, one, they don't necessarily have a say, right?
Okay.
They're an investment partner, right? So they partner with us in different areas where they might come in and say, hey, we want to introduce you guys to this vendor or this technology partner that we've worked with before. They might be able to solve something that you guys were working on. Or, hey, they've got an idea. Can you guys bring this to a product iteration? How would that look? So I think one of the opportunities that we took advantage of is an introduction between us and Royal. So Royal is a Chinese company that's been working on flexible screen technologies. So we got the introduction. We saw what they were working on, and we said, okay, what can we do with an audio product that could leverage a flexible screen? Not only for us to continue to show our design aptitude, but our execution and technology aspects of it, but what can we do to kind of change the landscape? And that's where the Mirage product kind of came from, was the idea behind executing a flexible screen inside a smart speaker. And
Very cool.
And so that product will actually hit the market in early April timeframe with one of the first flexible AMOLED displays with Alexa smart voice control in it.
Wow. Well, we'll touch a little bit more on kind of like the expansion, I guess. But like, how do you balance selling the current models and sort of beginning to promote the latest and greatest? Speaking of expansion, I guess. But like, if you know what's in the works and you've already come up with this Flow headphone, how do you go about continually selling the old stuff, for the lack of a better description, while also promoting something newer?
It's actually fairly easy, because we know where the next iteration is going to go, because it solved problems that we've, not just with our own product that we might discover, like, hey, this execution wise wasn't as good, but we see how the consumers are reacting to it, what they're saying, like, consumer reviews, whether it's a call to our technical support line, or if it's a review on Amazon. We actually read these and we talk about them fairly regularly, because we want to make sure that we offer the best product. But what we are encouraged with is that we know that it's the best product we have in the market, and it's only going to get better. And so we kind of keep that focus on when you line up what we're making versus the competition, we're always extremely proud with how we stack up. And so being able to push it and promote it and know that it's a great opportunity for consumers to get a product that they're going to have for years to come is always, the forefront of the mind. Knowing what's coming only gets us more excited, because if we can build on these stories today with great product, the next product's only going to be even better. And in the headphone space, I mean, everybody needs more than one pair of headphones, depending on your use case, right? Most people have like a pair for the gym, and then they have a casual pair that they might wear around the house or at the office in a lot of cases. And then they have that premium noise cancellation that they get on the tin can in the air and want to be avoid that random conversation with the person sitting next to you, and you need to cancel out that drone of the engine noise for hours on end. So there's those levels, and then of course there's one more step above for really the enthusiast to get that the ultimate set of headphones, so that when you can't blast your loudspeakers in your house, you can put an equal experience on your head with headphones.
So you mentioned Amazon. Can you touch on a little bit about what your distribution looks like, and like kind of what percentage is maybe direct to consumer, would you say, versus wholesale versus, are you doing fulfillment by Amazon? Like what are you guys up to?
Yeah, we do a lot of fulfillment by Amazon, and we also sell through our own website. And then we've also recently expanded into some regional brick and mortar stores. So if you're in the Utah, Nevada, and then Northern California, we're in RC Willey. And then we're working with a handful of other regional dealers through the course of this past month, which has been pretty successful, of our CES showing. And so we'll be in many more regional dealers over the next 3 to 4 months as we continue to build our reputation, as well as get our product out to these retailers as they reset their floors for the upcoming calendar year.
So yeah, my next question was sort of like what would have been the avenues of promotion as well. You mentioned CES, obviously that's a huge one, Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas every January.
Every January for many, many years, with I think there's 180,000 attendees this year. A lot of what we're doing is focused on press engagement as well as retailer engagement at that event. But we spend a lot of time on social media. We spent a lot of time trying to participate in different media formats, so including podcasts, but as well as a lot of press interviews, a lot of product reviews, so to speak, so that we can expose the brand. I think that between our PR efforts and our social media efforts, it's a majority of our marketing budget is spent in that kind of realm. And then, of course, we need to spend a ton of time on digital marketing efforts, because we know that's where consumers shop. And working within the Amazon marketplace is that double-edged sword. It's crowded, it's crazy, it's not inexpensive, but it's absolutely fulfilling, because it's, again, you're getting a lot of eyeballs on your product and your brand. But then you're getting real-time feedback. If someone likes your product, you're going to hear about it. And if someone doesn't like your product, you're definitely going to hear about it, not only directly if they contact customer support, but we're going to hear about it through their reviews. And fortunately, we've had a really positive experience with all of our customers to date.
As far as pricing goes, how have you guys determined your pricing? And like, what was like the driver behind whatever you would label your market segment that you're geared towards?
Sure. There's a lot of different elements that come into it. Like, first, the cost of manufacturing and the volume that we think we can do at a certain price point, of course, and the profitability that we need for every model to contribute to the bottom line. But ultimately, like, how do we fit in that crowded marketplace? Like, there are premium, expensive brands like the Sonys and the Bose and the Beats of the world, and then there's other products, right? And then we want to make sure that we're in that other product segment. We're not at the cost leader, but we're more in that premium audio market that gives high technical aptitude, great performance capabilities at a much more reasonable price. And so we're probably anywhere between 25 to 30% less expensive than some of the larger brands out there. And that's done very intentionally, because we want to make sure that we provide a significant value for the consumer. And that's one of the fortunate things about being in a smaller organization. We've got pretty low overhead. I mean, you're sitting in our office. We're nothing glamorous, but it's functional. That's kind of how we operate as an organization. Is eventually we'll grow, and we're okay with that taking time. But we want to make sure we do it in a very thoughtful and organic way, so that we're delivering the best possible product to our customers, every month, every year, every iteration. We want to make sure that there's a lot of value added into it. And, fancy headquarters don't necessarily constitute great product. It just means you have a fancy headquarter.
Speaking of growth, as far as product offerings, how do you determine how many products you guys offer as your total assortment?
It varies. It goes back into the first thing, like what problems are we solving?
Sure.
What's how complicated the product is, and then what's the competitive marketplace? So, we try to keep it very focused on what we think we can make headway in, and then stuff that we think that's going to be much more competitive, we'll shy away from. I think one of the interesting products that we brought to market at CES was a model called ARC, and this was an earpadless headphone. And so the whole concept is behind how do you increase situational awareness without having to do away with a headphone. And so we created not only an interesting design, so it looks somewhat like a headphone and on trend, but also serves a purpose of a really robust audio experience without having to blast your own eardrums, but people around you, so that we can keep it at a respectable level, so that if you are talking to someone, the odds are they might barely hear, if not at all, the headphone. But we wanted to solve a problem in the market, because those earpadless headphones that are out there currently, they don't do a really good job sonically of presenting the music right. Like, they have a limited frequency range because of the technology that they choose to implement. So we looked at it a little bit differently, like how can we improve? How can we change this for the better? And so that's where the art came from. And so we were really excited to see the amount of consumers and retailers actually talking about it, because again, this was one of those things that we kind of just, hey, will this work? What's the interest if we're really going to do this? And we surprised ourselves with the amount of excitement that we garnered around it.
That's awesome. So as the company has evolved, walk us through a little bit of like some of the changes and adaptations you've had to make, and be it, what's the employee count, for example, now from when even a year ago, maybe?
We've added 2 additional bodies, so that's good. But I think the biggest challenge is not only the human resource, but the financial resource. And part of our stewardship of the brand and trying to build that momentum is doing things that are appropriate for the size of our organization throughout our growth strategy. So, yes, we can go out and secure celebrities, and yes, we can go out and do all sorts of crazy marketing and advertising campaigns and TV commercials, but are we prepared to handle that kind of workload, and not just on a physical, but on a cost wise? And will it translate to us in a product performance area or a revenue stream? And we want to make sure that as we do this, like we're building our brand and our organization in a way that we can strategically grow as our sales grow. And so a lot of what we've been doing over the course of the past year, if not more than, is how do you set that foundation? How do you set that foundation for growth? It's not always about the shiny lights in the front end where you can see, oh, wow, that's an amazing image. It's really, does that image pay off where it has the right meta tags? And is it associated correctly with the storytelling that you want? Is it on brand? How do you tell those micro stories along the way, so that as you start to grow as an organization, you can evolve effectively versus just grow really big and then now what? And then you're onboarding a whole new staff, and you're growing so fast that you can't really you can sustain the momentum, but you can't really sustain the direction of the company. And I think that as you look at a lot of small organizations, it's, there's 2 really difficult things to do: build a product and then grow over time without having to, and grow profitably over time without having to really change your heartbeat of the organization.
So how on the forefront is the marketing effort then? Because, profitability, marketing dollars come straight out of that, I would imagine. So
100%.
So do you guys subscribe to the stereotypical 10%, rule of marketing, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and this is where we kind of pick our battles. Like, one, we do have a foundational marketing plan. It's about 10% of our overall revenue. But more importantly, like, we look at what's our opportunities and where are we going to get the most out of those dollars. So a lot of what I've focused our spend on is the back end infrastructure of our site, because we need to make it and optimize it in an effective way so that we can convert more efficiently, so that when we do drive traffic, we're actually converting traffic, not just driving traffic and watching page abandonment. But also, how do you raise the visibility in a credible way for our products and our brand story? And so a lot of that's through press and through social media. So we spend a ton of time, not only my own, and then but the leadership's time, but also our financial resources on PR programs and making sure that we can talk to the media and that we can tell our story, and we can tell it not only with every product iteration, but we can tell our brand and our directional story, so that as we continue to grow, it's only going to continue to echo the stories that we've told. And then, with the overall, marketing stuff, like how do we have the right photography done? How do we have the right video work done? And do we blitz it and do it all at once, or do we do it strategically over time as we look at products entering the market and being able to tell these stories? Because as a marketer, I would love to have a huge tool chest of financial and human resources that I could throw at projects. I mean, that's what it makes my job a ton of fun doing it. But it's also those strategic opportunities and those chances that you take that can pay off down the line, because you were smart enough or educated enough in with experiences that you're able to say, okay, you know what, this is really enticing, but we're not ready for that kind of approach. And I think like celebrity endorsements and some of the influencer stuff that you start to see, those are prime examples of a lot of companies. It's easy to pay someone to tell a story, but are you in the right spot when you pay that person to help tell your story, that you're going to be able to take all the benefits of that and capitalize on it? And I think it's one of those daily, if not weekly, conversations that we have as an organization, and as I evaluate any of our business opportunities with other companies. Is like, does it make sense? If it doesn't make sense today, will it make sense in a year from now, or is it just not aligned with our brand strategy?
So have you guys experienced anything that is just abundantly clear that no pun intended, abundantly clear that it has worked better than other, like that slow trickle versus like the big dump, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Our PR strategy has been fantastic with the agencies we partnered with, both here in the US as well as in the UK. The amount of work and reviews and credibility that they've added to the brand and our product stories has been tremendous. So much so that a year from now, there was a handful of retailers that wouldn't talk to us. At CES, they all showed up and they all set up meetings with our sales leader to start evaluating contracts and partnerships and seeing how they can bring us into their stores.
So these PR efforts have actually reached out to specific retailers for you on your behalf?
No, not on our behalf, but because of the stories that they were able to generate with our support, we were able to build a reputation, where these buyers were reading about us in publications, and then they were wondering, like, well, why don't we carry them?
Yeah, like, who are these guys?
Right.
Yeah.
And when we're getting 5-star reviews or best of show kind of awards, and they're like, well, wait a second, why? Oh, you guys are legit. You did show up. You did do your homework. You did your due diligence on the products, and you're bringing stuff to market that the press, who see hundreds of companies and thousands of products every year, are actually taking notice and spending time to write about. I think it's a really valuable way that it's not just a consumer word of mouth as much as it is the professional reviews that are really certain to come in for us and get behind us as an organization.
That's great. Where's the company going? Like, where do you see it expanding?
So right now our focus is on regional dealers, mostly because they have not only a strong relationship with their consumers, but a strong educated sales floor. I think that when you look at in the audio space, whether it's home audio or headphones, it can be a commoditized market. And what that means in a lot of cases is like, we're one of hundreds of brands that can show up. I mean, if you've ever been on Amazon, you can see there's hundreds, if not thousands of brands at this point at all different price levels. Now, are some products great and some products bad? Absolutely, like with any market. But building that credible story over time is where we see our overall growth. So we're going to start with this regional strategy and online strategy for now, and build and make sure that we can not only have a great relationship with our retailers, but then take that into a national level down the line when we're ready as an organization to support that kind of presence. Because again, we know that we don't want to show up on the big stage and then fail. We want to show up and succeed and make sure that we can drive this value that we offer the consumers nationwide in order to do that, we need to be prepared for that opportunity. And so right now, this year, as well as last year, and then, possibly next year, is all part of that strategy of moving our brand to into the space where we're ready for that challenge, where we can take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's great. What's been sort of the hardest part, would you say?
Not being able to go as fast as we would like. And that's with retail assortment as well as marketing and just general efforts. I mean, there's 7 of us in the U.S., 6 of us in this office that you're in right now, and we're small. And we all have seen and been in experiences with huge corporations with tons of resources. And we know where we need to get. We just can't move fast enough to get there. And I think that's kind of some of the frustration that we all have. But we also understand that there's a level of patience that we need to show over the course of time, because it's only going to benefit us. Because, like we had talked about before, if we rush, we're not going to be ready.
Yeah, I was going to say, it almost sounds like a positive problem due to the fact that like it's easier to know what's ahead and like the reward being the anticipation, right? Versus like trying to keep your head above water.
Yeah, but we all know what that prize is at the end of the day. So that's where the excitement comes from. But we also like to kind of reflect back on, we want to make thoughtful products. We want to be a brand. We don't want to just discount product to get on shelves and to drive large volumes. I mean, anybody can do that. Not everybody can come up with a brand story and a consumer relationship that adds value into a really compacted marketplace. And right now, that's kind of our focus is how do we build that relationship? How do we build that brand visibility and the right products for consumers?
Well, that was another thing I wanted to ask you based on distribution. And we've talked a little bit about the wholesale distribution and working with retail partners. How do you guys go about vetting them or sifting through the ones that you may or may not want to get in? Have you guys experienced anything where you've wanted to be a part of this retailer, but they're just not taking you on? Like, how have those relationships evolved?
Well, I mean, yes to everything you just said. I think that one thing, having been in the industry and knowing a lot of the buyers from our previous companies helps, because at least we can get a conversation started. But having the right reputation, because as much as you want them to trust you, they're still taking a risk for their own job and their own company that they want it to pay off. And collectively, everybody wants the organization to succeed, and so you got to do it in the right instance, in the right situation, and building the momentum in PR with the technical press and the enthusiast press and the lifestyle press, and then getting this momentum, the stories being told, helps them have confidence that there is viability in the product. The right size and the right relationships is all about the distributors and the rep firms that we sign up. How our sales leader looks at not only what the retailer is, but how they work with their consumers. Because we're at a time where we can be selective, just like they're at a time where they can be selective as well. We want to make sure that we have that right relationship between the organizations that makes sense, which is why we've been targeting a lot of the smaller, more educated sales floors. These guys that mean something to their customers. They're not the larger chain stores where they just want you to come in and pick up your item and leave, order online, get it and go, and there is no relationship. A lot of these retailers work with mid to higher end goods. They've got long-term relationships, and if it's not the first purchase from a customer, it's probably their 5th or 10th or 50th over the course of the company's time in business. And I think it's fascinating to some of these more regional dealers that are stalwarts in their marketplace. Like, they're not getting knocked out of business because Amazon is online. They're taking advantage of it. They're and really continue their reputation, whether it's with a custom installation or higher end audio or people looking for good advice. I mean, they know that a lot of these educated sales floors, like, these guys are professional salesmen. They've been in the business for years. It's not a summer job that someone has as a passing hobby to get a discount on the new gaming system that they're going to release, or an iPhone, right?
Right. So what, I mean, obviously I come from the apparel side of retail, so there's a very seasonality type of, you buy twice a year for fall, winter, spring, summer. What is the consumer electronics approach? Is it annual, or do you show the sample like you do in fashion and then you take orders and then go to production accordingly? Like how does it work?
Lot of similarities. Like we do have annual resets that we have to work towards for retailers, but then you have the seasonality of when people buy product, right? Like summer travel is a huge opportunity for us as a headphone company because people are buying stuff to go on a trip with. Back to school, and then of course the holiday season is also really big, and even Father's Day. And so gearing up new product introductions or bundles or sales opportunities that focus around that always helps with the sell-in and sell-through. I mean, it's amazing what some of these larger retailers can also do with their own, private sales or their own demand generation within their own market, depending on what's happening in their regional space.
So what's been easy for you guys?
Wow. Coming to work, really, and getting behind the brand and the passion that's happening. I mean, we're all seasoned in the industry and we've all been in and out of iconic brands. You lose some of that passion with some of these larger organizations because you don't have that ownership. You don't have, and it's not even a control aspect of it, but it's the willingness to take that experiment and bring it to market, or that idea and that concept, and know that you've had a hand from the ideation to the execution, and the success is built on your hard work, not and your team's hard work, not the fact that your company is 100 years old and people have bought generations of it and it's a feature up of an older generation. But really, this is a thoughtful product that we solve the problem for. So I think it's kind of really what gets us going. Like, we have a really good team. It's a fun environment, and it's one of those things where, everybody's involved with almost every aspect of the business because there are so few of us, and the experience that we've all had collectively makes what we do that much better than some of our competitors. We're not young kids, so to speak, but we are young enough and have enough energy that we can take our experiences, the good and the bad, and we've learned from it, and we want a real positive experience and a team experience. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about accepting the situation and being patient and, enjoying coming to work. I mean, this has been the most fun I've had in my career over the past year. Being in a new, young, small company, we got to be scrappy. We got to come up with ideas regularly to stand out and to compete with these large organizations that have a war chest. I mean, not only with human resources, but with, cash. Right? We don't have that aspects of it. So, but we can do things that they can't do as well. We can join conversations on a podcast and not have to get permission from 14 different managers in order to make sure that this is okay, and then have, a handler sitting close by to make sure that you're on message. We can actually speak from our own experience, speak from the heart, and show what we're all about as an organization, pretty unvetted. And so it's been a fun experience, especially like dealing with media. I mean, my experience when I started out in PR and working for huge brands and, chaperoning executives and helping tell the brand story, and then be able to translate that to being the story has been an absolute blast.
Cool. Well, just kind of wrapping things up a little bit, you've got your product catalog here for 2020.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Wow.
What's coming out that you're just jazzed about?
I think one of the most exciting products that we have coming out is called the Crescent. And so it's a smart audio speaker. So we're still working on who our voice assistant partner will be. But what's really unique about this product that's got me especially excited about is that we took the concept of everybody has a smart speaker, right? We understand that, but they all look the same. They're either a cylinder, they're wrapped in fabric, or they're a square box. And, you've got a wedding ring on just like I do. I don't live in my house by myself. So putting a black speaker in my house, even with all my experience and tenure in the industry, is always frowned upon with my wife. And even my kids are like, Dad, that's ugly. So the Crescent kind of transforms that environment. So we did take, just like the name, a crescent style shape to it. It's high design. It's a gorgeous color variant. It's not black. We probably most likely won't even have a black model that will come out. But the idea of it is like, how do you have this piece of audio fit into a home environment and look like it belongs? Looks like it's a statue or a fixture that you purchased in order to accentuate the design of your living space. So what makes it even more exciting on a technical side is we actually worked with a company on a collaboration of a linear array design. So that's basically putting the 8 speakers that it'll have all in a single line, and it has a little bit of a crescent shape to it. We developed some specific driver housings to be able to support the linear array. And then with the technology of our partner company called Dysonics, we were able to execute some really unique sound profiles that take this single box environment and make it feel like you're listening to more than one speaker. And not just in I'm going to bounce a bunch of loud noises off of walls, but actually in a very uniform effect where you can sit in a reasonable space and not have to bounce anything off of walls, but it uses phase and time alignment to create a 3-dimensional sound field, or a 2 speaker sound field where you feel like the left and right speakers are actually there when it's really just coming out of a single unit with multiple speakers in a linear array. So that to me has been just really exciting to be a part of, from not only the design orientation of it and having my 2 cents in it versus just being delivered a design and say, go market it. But also on the technology side and the different listening sessions that we've had as an organization and input that we've had on how it sounds and what it's supposed to be. And, presenting it for the first time at CES, it was mind blowing the amount of excitement that we were able to generate. It way surpassed our expectation just at the show alone, where we knew we had something special. But to see the accolades, I mean, as a product, it received 3 Best of Show at CES.
That's awesome.
Which was fantastic. And then we ranged a gamut of those awards. So we got a Best of Show from House Beautiful. So we have that design and female publication. But then we also got a Best of Show from AVS Forum, which is the complete opposite spectrum, because that's more of an enthusiast, all about performance in the audio space. And the editor, Mark, when he had pulled out the award from his bag after we had spent time demoing the product to him, he's like, he was blown away. He's like, look, I just listened to Sony's 3D sound that they did, and it's still in this prototypical kind of sense of like, here's a statement piece, but we don't even know if it's going to come to market. Here's some iterations of it.
It's like the prototype car that would be released that may never come out.
Right, but it proved that they can do a technology.
Sure.
And then he came and visited us, and not only did he see our concept of a little bit different of an iteration of how to do 3-dimensional sound, but really how to take a single box solution and make it sound like it's a multi-speaker experience, but then execute it with, we're going to ship it later this year. And that just blew him away, because he has seen tons of iterations over his career and the amount of products that he's touched that say they can do certain things, but then never deliver or never come to market. And when we demoed it, we didn't have walls that we were bouncing stuff off of. I mean, we were on a trade show floor, tons of noise.
Yeah.
And he was thoroughly impressed with our execution, and we're only about 80% done of the sound quality of it. So there's still room for us, both in a software and a hardware sense, to continue to improve before we bring this to market. But that excitement alone, and then to top it off, a week after we got back, we received a Best of Show from Newsweek. And so to hit those 3 pillars for us was just, it was awesome.
Astronomical. And so, yeah. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. And that of course brings retail interest when they start reading about all the products that came to market or were introduced at CES, and they start reading about, us little old, Cleer folks, and, the products that we were able to introduce, and the new concepts, the new thoughtfulness that we're putting into the market, instead of just one more product after another, like some of the other brands do, that have little or no difference to the previous generation. They're starting to take notice, and I think it's going to be a really exciting year for us in 2020.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Well, is there anything else you'd want to promote or chat about?
Really, it's to get to know our brand. I mean, clearaudio.com. We've got all of our product available that's currently shipping. You can buy direct from us. You can check us out on Amazon. But also, really importantly, follow us on social media. We're Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're telling a lot of stories, not just about what we're individually passionate about, but what we want to be as a brand as we continue to evolve. I mean, we did a whole campaign called Own the Moment, where we worked with local San Diego dancer, musician, and artist to kind of tell that story of what it's like to embrace audio and how it helps them through their daily life.
Fantastic. Well, Aaron, again, thanks so much for taking part in the show. Really excited to have you on.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate being here.
All right. Well, let's chat soon.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Aaron one more time for having me over to the Cleer Audio offices. Sincerely appreciate him dedicating his time. Of course, as always, using his headphones for the podcast has been a wonderful experience, and they're also incredibly useful for long flights. Their noise cancellation properties, etc., have been instrumental in my travel. Also, thank you to Jensen Reed and Super Beautiful for providing the title track. And we will catch you next week. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.